If you've spent even 5 minutes online looking for health advice, you know what a total battlefield it is. It's confusing, it's polarizing, and honestly, it feels like everyone is shouting. Well, today, we're going to try and cut right through all of that noise. And this is the question at the absolute heart of the debate, isn't it? Plants versus animals. It's set up like the ultimate dietary showdown, and you've got passionate people on both sides, promising you the world. But look, we're not here to pick a winner, not at all. Instead, think of us as your neutral guide. We're just going to dive straight into the research and see what the evidence actually says about these really different ways of eating. Okay, so first things first, before we can even start comparing these diets, we've got to be crystal clear on what we're talking about. So let's quickly define our terms. So this table lays out the ground rules pretty simply. Vegan is the most restrictive on the plant-based side. If it comes from an animal, it's out. Vegetarian is a bit more flexible, sometimes allowing things like dairy or eggs. Then you have ketogenic, which is a whole different ballgame. It's not really about plants versus animals. It's all about cutting carbs way, way down to force your body to burn fat for fuel. And then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got carnivore, the total opposite of veganism. Only animal products, period. All right, so we know the players. Let's head to our first battleground, weight and metabolism. For a lot of people, this is the #1 reason they even start a new diet. So let's see what the science has to say. Now, this is where it gets really interesting right away, because the research shows that both of these very different approaches can lead to weight loss. You see, on the left, a high-quality study found that plant-based diets led to some pretty serious drops in weight and body fat. But then you look to the right, and you see that people following carnivore and keto diets are also seeing results. One survey showed their followers' average BMI, that's body mass index, dropping from the overweight range right down into the normal range. Let's just zero in on this number for a second. In that 12-week scientific trial, the group on a strictly vegan diet lost, on average, 6.7% of their body weight. Now, to put that in perspective, for a 200-pound person, that's more than 13 pounds gone in just 3 months. That's a powerful result from a really well-controlled study. And now for some contrast, look at this. A small study put healthy young adults on a carnivore diet for just 3 weeks, and they lost an average of 4 kilos. That's almost 9 pounds. So it shows that rapid results are definitely possible. But we have to stress this. It was a very short-term study. What happens long-term is way less clear. But health is so much more than just a number on a scale. So let's move to our next battleground, heart health. In this is where the two sides really start to go their separate ways. This slide just perfectly illustrates that split. The evidence for plant-based diets is pretty consistent across the board. They're linked to lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, and lower rates of heart disease. But for animal-based diets, the picture gets a lot more complex. So, people on a carnivore diet reported good levels of HDL, that's the good cholesterol, but, and this is a huge but, they also reported a major spike in their LDL cholesterol. And this is the number that makes cardiologists really nervous. 172. That was the average LDL, the bad cholesterol, for a group of carnivore dieters who got it checked. Just for some context, most health guidelines want that number to be under 100. So a number this high, it's a pretty big red flag for long-term heart disease risk. And this isn't just some fringe concern. It's echoed by major health organizations. The American Heart Association, in its official guidance, actually ranked very low-carb diets like keto as among the worst for heart health, and they specifically called out that predictable rise in LDL cholesterol you get from all that saturated fat. Now, every single highly restrictive diet, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle it's on, has a potential vulnerability, a kind of Achilles heel. And that's the risk of missing out on some really essential nutrients. So on the plant-based side, these potential gaps are pretty well known. Vitamin B12 is the big one. It's absolutely crucial for your nerves, and you just can't find it in plants. But you also have to be really careful about getting enough iron to prevent fatigue and enough calcium for your bones. It's not that a vegan diet can't be incredibly healthy, but it for sure requires very careful planning and often some supplementation. And you know what? The exact same principle applies to the carnivore diet. When you get rid of all plants, you get rid of all dietary fiber, which is so important for a healthy gut. You're also missing out on vitamin C, which your immune system needs, and this whole universe of amazing protective plant compounds called phytochemicals. It just goes to show you, extreme restriction in any direction is going to have trade-offs. So, We've looked at weight, we've looked at heart health, we've looked at nutrient risks. But what does all of this actually mean for you? How are we supposed to make sense of all this conflicting info? Let's try to bring it all together. Now, check out this quote. This is from a big Harvard-led survey of over 2,000 people on a carnivore diet. And it's really important to acknowledge this because it captures the positive, real-world experience that a lot of people report. Many of them say they feel better than they ever have before. But, and you knew there was a but coming, right? We have to add the crucial context here. This was a survey of a group of people who chose to participate, mostly on social media. And that can create a really strong positive bias. And as the researchers themselves admit, the long-term effects of eating this way are a complete unknown. The research just isn't there yet. That being said, the research is starting to explore some really interesting therapeutic uses. This slide highlights a fascinating case series published just this year. What it found was that 10 patients with inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD, actually reached clinical remission after they adopted a carnivore ketogenic diet. Now, this doesn't mean it's a cure-all, but it does suggest that for certain people with very specific, severe inflammatory conditions, this could be a powerful tool. So what should you really take away from all this? I think it boils down to 4 key points. First, diet quality matters way more than the label. A whole food, plant-based diet is a world away from a junk food, vegan diet. Second, restriction always has risks. No matter what you're cutting out, careful planning is absolutely non-negotiable. Third, context is everything. The benefits people feel might come from what they've eliminated, like sugar and processed junk, just as much as from what they've added. And finally, the big one. We desperately need more good long-term research on these diets. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. We've seen clear benefits and potential risks in every single camp. So is the real path to better health about picking a side, digging in your heels, and defending it to the end? Or is it maybe about building a bridge and focusing on the common ground, like the importance of whole, unprocessed foods that can help pretty much everyone, no matter what they choose to eat? That's something to think about.